Hello everybody and welcome to Untether.tv. I'm your host and founder, Rob Woodbridge, and by now you know what we do here. I keep reminding you, but that's okay. We are diving deep into the mobile space. We're interviewing folks. We're having great conversations around what the technology is and what the service is and what the business drivers are in mobile and pervasive computing. So how do you bring it into your business? How do you build business around this with the sole intent of how do you generate revenue, new income, not splitting your existing income? That's what mobile, the promise of mobile is, and that's what we're doing here at Untether.tv. So when we project a little bit into the future, not very far into the future, but the thing that keeps coming back, I'm not talking about augmented reality, but it's a portion of it. I'm not talking about anything other than artificial intelligence, big data, small screens, what's going on here. This is the kind of thing that, this isn't science fiction, this is science fact. Nodes everywhere. What do we do with all this data? There is reams of data, and there's something called inference, where you can actually understand your preferences as a consumer, your preferences as a business, and display things that benefit you all around this little thing called artificial intelligence. So how do businesses benefit from this? Where does it fit into mobile commerce? Where does it fit into, e-commerce, travel, shopping? Where does it fit into everything? That is the show today. So welcome to it. I have from Sweden, Lars Hard, who is the CTO and founder of a company called ExpertMaker. They're an artificial intelligence software company, and we are blessed to have Lars on the show. Lars, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have so much to cover in the episode today, simply because this is such a topic that everybody is playing with. But you guys, ExpertMaker, has been around since 2006, well before this real mobile revolution started when the first iPhone was released. So why don't you describe, what is ExpertMaker, and then we're gonna really dive into some of these topics that I mentioned at the top.
Okay, ExpertMaker is actually an artificial intelligence company, and we have a slightly different approach than many other companies in this space that we can find out on the market today, because we decided quite early on in developing our company that we wanted to have a broad deployment of AI to give more people access to this kind of technologies that will enable more even small companies to utilize and gain value from this kind of technologies, because normally AI is associated with very secret research labs and very large budgets and so on. And that has been a historical problem, or it has also had a very academic side to it, not really proving what it could be utilized in for many different kinds of situations. So we are not talking about rocket science anymore. We are trying to provide very simple to use tools that a more broader audience can utilize to enhance and create value for their normal standard business. And what is an exciting development is actually that this stuff fits really well into the mobile space, because there are so many problems associated with being mobile, having a small screen device, and so on and so on. So there are many advantages bringing this kind of technology on.
So you're bringing it, like the whole goal of ExpertMaker was to somewhat democratize or simplify artificial intelligence so that small businesses, any business, can start to use this in a way that benefits them, as keeping it out of that research level and bringing it, really making it human, so to speak, artificial intelligence, humanizing artificial intelligence. Does that make sense?
That absolutely makes sense, because looking at this space, it normally requires quite a lot to produce anything that's smart, and we all know that today we are writing software in order to produce a good high quality service, regardless if it's for web or it's for mobile. But we have to write that, we have to create programs that do it. Bringing on artificial intelligence becomes more like a teaching activity. It's like having more data available, and how do we transform all this data into something more meaningful, and how do we transform it into new kinds of services that provides value for customers. So that requires new thinking and new tools and a bit new methods but it's for everyone, because knowledge is not for just the smart guys in the research labs with white coats on them. It's for everyone, because everyone who has a business knows something about their business. And the question is there an efficient tool that can transform some of that knowledge that will improve the business itself or create higher value? For example, can I create a better recommendation system if I have an e-business site, a mobile e-business site? Can I create a higher value by providing better discovery features, for example, so people can find the right products that they need, or a better recommendation system? If I can do that and I can add some of my own knowledge and experience, because if I have a business, I know a lot about it for sure. And if I can transfer that in some way, then I mean, that's really the next step. So we need a bit of new tools and a few new methods how to work with this, and that in turn results in hopefully higher quality services. And it has nothing to do with actually creating some kind of artificial brains. It's very practical and very pragmatic, actually.
Yeah, there's no neuroscience involved here. This is crunching data and looking for patterns ultimately, and then providing those patterns back.
Yeah, that is one way of looking at it, because there are many techniques that we look at. And neuroscience, for example, has had a tremendous impact on artificial intelligence, because we are learning how to create efficient systems and models based and inspired by biological systems. So that's where neuroscience comes into this. But it's still relatively simplistic, and often we misuse artificial intelligence in terms that we always think that it's kind of a rocket science for only very advanced problems, like sending things out in space or creating very advanced discovery system for very complicated data in medicine or whatever it is that we try to achieve. But there are so many applications that could benefit from becoming slightly a bit more human-like, slightly understanding a bit more about where we are, how we want to interact. And that spans over many different faculties, like recognizing images, understanding noise, voices, sounds, music. It spans over recommending stuff, finding an optimal configuration, for example, or estimate something that could help people to understand and to get insights in their own problems or situations and help them to find the right items, for example, to buy. And so there are many techniques and many sources of inspiration, but the direction often comes from it comes from intelligence itself, and that thus neuroscience is somewhat relevant in this discussion anyway. So yeah,
is it when you start to think about artificial intelligence, and you've been a part of this now for going on over 6 years in this business. I mean, and you have a longer history in this as well. But do you look at artificial intelligence today as much simpler than you thought it would be when you started addressing this problem 6 years ago, or this challenge 6 years ago? Has it gotten easier today with the amount of data?
I think that a very good thing to keep in mind is we are not trying to build brains in any way. Like artificial intelligence, it is truly artificial. So by having a sound definition of the word or the term artificial intelligence in this case makes it a bit easier to understand that it's not the goal is not to emulate in the human mind or brain in any way, but to take out different pieces that can be used and improve, and to move things as a next step, evolve how we solve things and how we create better systems and so on. So that's but to answer your question, of course, I think we got deep insights into during this journey of developing this kind of tools and techniques for a broader audience that anyone could use. Like it should be on the level like a spreadsheet program take that as a good benchmark for when we have reached a good position. So doing so, I think we learned that it's not about the algorithms themselves, because they can be improved, slightly improved, and they can be, we can reduce the error rate slightly, and we can compare and say that, oh, we have such and such much better algorithm than you have, etc. And we can compete on that level. But it is diminishing returns. Because algorithms, it's not interesting because the true advantage and the true value creation process, it comes from creating systems instead, understanding how things interact and how we can combine different small pieces to interact in better ways that gives a whole improvement to the system. And I think that a lot of the work we do is about having a very broad approach of use. We use a lot of different algorithms in ExpertMaker, and we span over most of the known AI algorithms. And we can, by combining them, we can also optimize which one is best used for a certain situation. And often it's a modeling activity, finding out how to combine different small and very, very simple algorithms and models and bring that to become a whole, to become a system, actually. So that's, I think, a lot of inspiration from that part, at least, comes from how biological systems are formed in different ways, because they are built from many different small and simple pieces that are connected together. And I think that's the right approach, because historically AI was that we could build very advanced machines that could think or plan or make decisions, and they had all the knowledge, and we encoded that, and that's not a it proved that it didn't actually work by having that approach. So I think a much more lightweight approach to AI, where we combine many simple algorithms and models into a large whole new space, gives us much better results and more robustness, actually.
Yeah, it almost seems like when you shed that vision of, what we think of as science fiction augmented reality or artificial intelligence, like, where you are recreating the brain and you're recreating humanoids and you're basically doing everything in the shadow of man, that it must be freeing for you to sit back and say, okay, we're not recreating the brain. We're not building a neural network here. We're not creating Frankenstein. But what we are doing here is we've got this problem that we want to solve, and this problem might be that I'm in this location and I'm trying. You should infer that I'm trying to solve this or go there or buy this, right? So, is that how you approach this now? Which is those kind of segmented pieces of time, yes, space, location, all that kind of stuff, and then you say, okay, we've got so many input mechanisms. Now we can infer based on a whole bunch of algorithms and our data behind it.
Yeah. You summarized it quite well, I think, and it's also about having access to lots of people that know stuff and allowing them to express themselves exactly as they, before we got spreadsheets. Yeah. I mean, it was complicated to do calculations for most people, and we didn't have it. It was, you wrote programs, you wrote Fortran programs and stuff like that. And someone invented this spreadsheet, and suddenly it's all over the world, and everyone has it in education and at work and so on. We use spreadsheets as a mean to express something in mathematical terms. So by looking at this in tools, having these tools perspective on things, that we could create equally simple to use desktop tools. We can also have people to transfer different aspects and angles and play around with this kind of models and so on in order to just create value for specific situations. So we are in our way of thinking, you mentioned search, for example, in the beginning of this show, and I think that we are very vertical in our way of seeing the world, that we need not to have more large-scale search engine, but we need millions of micro search engines that are very bright and interconnected with each other. And those micro search engines should, of course, be created by not single companies.
Right.
They should be created and connected by the many.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think this is a paradigm shift in how we look at this kind of more advanced information systems. And I think that it needs to be brought back to everyone who wants to contribute. Like today we have a web with basically static pages.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because of no one knew about the web when we started building it. So it was mirrored pretty much after paper,
Yep.
Having a web page rather than a web function or a web service. And it's taken quite a lot of time just to move that. And the biggest problem of them all must be, for sure, the tools that are out there. They are not actually, we cannot find the right tools to express this kind of more dynamical, experience-based structures, because we need simply new tools and methods.
So you are talking about a complete shift, and I'm with you on this completely, Lars, right? Where you start to talk about shedding the way that we have done things because that's the way that we've done things, right? So your example of the website, excuse me, of the web is perfect because it is. We've just replicated paper, but digitally,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
you see this in every industry, and you bring it down to the industry. It's the same thing as that, e-commerce was just replicating what you would do in the store, and newspapers online are the same as you get in when you buy a newspaper. They're just digital, right? You don't get ink on your fingers. So when you talk like this, because this is what I anticipate somebody who is in the artificial intelligence world would talk about: redefining, reimagining, forgetting the way that we've done things because it's not right to where we're going, and reimagining all that. So when you start talking like this, what happens? Because people are hesitant to change. I mean, this is all familiar to us, so we can adapt to it easily, right? But do you find resistance when you talk about this sea shift that's happening right now when it comes to the way that we interact with information?
I think so, because from my perspective, for example, databases is one of the worst things that happened to mankind.
I love it.
I mean, even if it's kind of with a small, in a more humoristic sense, but still it has conserved a lot of how we think about information systems, because we thought it was actually that we should bring stuff together in large warehouses. And we didn't think about how things was interconnected, or because we started out by building tables of information, because that was mirrored from the classical paper world. We had filing cabinets, and bookshelves, and so
the Dewey Decimal System, right?
we had the Dewey.
Good old Dewey.
we for sure had, and things are not so easy, and so breaking that kind of things up and changing the thinking on a more profound level is very difficult, because people still want to stick to their databases, and I anticipate that it will take some time before we can distribute that on more scale, that it's not necessary to think about things as large repositories, because that's the classical way for companies to protect their assets, their digital assets. And I think that's a huge problem, because it just stops development. And for example, if you look at the health industry, it has had huge problems that the big pharma companies has kept all their data for themselves in large databases and not distributed them. But still, if they would have done that, it would have been too complex for anyone to digest it anyway. So we need another form how to distribute, disseminate information on broader scale. And I think that by bringing artificial intelligence on a more practical level, not talking about super smart systems and so on, it's just having a bit, systems inspired by more human qualities. And by starting to think about how I can contribute as an individual using simple to use tools, that started me. I mean, I have a totally different way of looking at information and structuring information, and even structuring the tasks I'm about to do. So for me, it is of course a journey, but since digital tools can spread very, very fast, as we have seen historically, like when spreadsheet programs entered
databases
space, yeah, and everything changed overnight, so to speak, because it was so good actually that no one could even, I mean, everyone had to learn it. And I really enjoyed that because it was such a step. Just looking in the light of, for example, word processors, which just is a mirror of a typewriting machine. And that's, I mean, they are still on that level, and we need some strong innovation coming from that space if we are going to see a very interesting development. But the spreadsheet was truly innovative in many senses, and it spread very, very fast. So that's what we are aiming at least from our perspective, is to speed this kind of development. And by having a sound way of looking at artificial intelligence and sharing it and democratizing it on every level, I think that can truly contribute to something.
So how do you start that? So, I mean, I can't, I picture this every day, is that you're thinking like this, right, Lars, where it's like the thing is so grandiose, right, that what we're talking about is you know, we have emulated everything that we do in real life into the digital world. And what we're talking about now is stripping that out and doing it the way that it should be done, which is drastically different, because we have many more input mechanisms than we did back then. And we have access to that, you know, anywhere, right? So, but where do you start? You know, when you're running a business, ExpertMaker, where you're helping companies bring artificial intelligence into their world so that they can help their customers benefit from using their services and products and selling and all those. So, you know, you have to kind of pull back, and then, you know, what's the first step that you bring into these companies so that you can help them start to adopt artificial intelligence? Like, I hate to dummy it down like this, but what is that first step that companies are taking in AI?
It is. I think that what's the biggest problem is that when getting access to these kind of tools, you start to think like you did before, but it's actually so you try to see it in the light, for example, of some kind of database or something like that. And so often the journey is by actually understanding that insight in information and data is fundamental for how we approach many problems. So our tools, they are a bit different than normal tools, I would say, because they integrate, they combine data mining, for example, with transformations, so you can mine and understand your own data in new ways. And then you can also get help to transform it, to create new structures, or even, for example, to teach a system how do we go from, for example, unstructured, lots of texts, we just have descriptions. How do we take that into a more structured form that will then enable us to publish some kind of AI that enables discovery, for example, in the same information space? So there are many steps that are involved. And I think that when we found out working with ExpertMaker, at least our approach was based on the fact that we need to have a very tight and very close integration between what we see as output from the AI and how we see the modeling process, the mining, the data mining, bringing in information to understand more. And then we can add the human qualities as well, because when we start to understand what we are seeing on screen, so we get new perspective on the information, we can get new ideas for how to create new services, how to improve the old services in order to bring more value into the end user. And I think that, so it's a very iterative process. And the problem is that you need to have, you need to start playing with it to actually take that step. So we have been running, for example, one hackathon in Silicon Valley. We did that just in June this year, and we have done lots of other activities to bring on and especially inspire smaller developers like this, even down to single individuals, to start building more smarter apps, to have more ideas and so on. And we see that takes on gradually, and our tools are spreading, and we truly try to help out especially smaller developers to bring more creativity and value into their apps using that. So
now, let me ask you this: smaller developers, because they're more likely to test boundaries, throw away established norms, innovate, or is it just because is that why you go with those guys?
Often, I think that they are very fast adopters when you present new ideas on, like, how to bring in AI, for example, in a very practical way into their applications. They often see this. They have a very rapid cycle in developing value, and I think it's required for the ecosystem to exist today. You need to rapidly bring value into it, and I think that when they do that, they start seeing that there are other potential. You can use this kind of technologies for new types of projects and so on, and then they start using us on a longer time scale to truly create some more innovative work. And we are seeing that happening as well, because we see that, for example, in image recognition, most people don't have access to image recognition technology. And there are so many applications that you can do if you start looking at image recognition not as a global problem where we have to recognize any type of object, but rather to have very specific type of image recognition for very vertical problems, very small and narrow problems instead. So we are seeing some creativity coming in that sector actually. So there's a lot of exciting things happening around.
So I'm speaking with Lars Hard, who is the CTO and founder of ExpertMaker at expertmaker.com. You alluded this at the very beginning, and I want to pick this up, but I also want to talk to you about how AI fits into certain sectors in the economy, and also how companies can start to look at this, how they should be looking at artificial intelligence when it comes to bringing it into their own business. But you know, one of the things you talked about, and I was nodding furiously around this, was this whole concept. Let me run this by you. Apple and Siri, right? So this is a humanized version of artificial intelligence. Yes or no?
Humanized version of artificial intelligence.
You know, like,
I would say it tries to move in that direction at least, because they kind of try to brand it that way, but I wouldn't fully agree with with that statement anyway. So,
but it is and yeah, it's probably the worst description of it. But it's a you know, it obfuscates the search engines, shall we say, right? So like when I speak into it, it tries to assemble, you know, some kind of directive, and then it does something like it searches or it adds a task, right? This is very task based, but from the average person's perspective, you know, it's like magic sometimes, right? When it says, you know, call my wife or search for this restaurant. But you said something that was really interesting to me, which was that search doesn't land in the lap of one company ultimately, that this should be a whole bunch of micro searches or personalized searches. And you know, I've been talking about Siri for quite some time, about that very fact that I believe that what we're seeing with these devices is the beginning of the ending of Google's traditional business as a search engine, and all of their revenue sitting inside of display advertising and the search business. When you've got a company as powerful as Apple with these devices obfuscating search results through Siri and just giving you the results but still doing the search in that database format. You know, people think I'm crazy. Maybe I am. Perhaps I am. But I do believe that what you're talking about, this artificial intelligence contextualized, really does, and the way you've described it as micro searches, a whole bunch of micro searches, personalized searches, really does put some big companies in jeopardy going down the line. Now, am I way off here, or you know, have you just lost complete respect for this conversation?
I think that we at least I think that there is an interesting business in facts searching, for example. We can see it from both commercial perspective, like Google and Apple and so on. They deliver facts and traditional information. And you have Wikipedia and so on. So there are many. I mean, there are non-commercial, and so I think that will still be an ecosystem, of course. And in some sense, that type of facts can be organized by single entities,
right,
rather than. But if you look into human knowledge and experience on a more grand scheme, I mean, then it's totally impossible that single companies will control that. And I think that just thinking about all this static information that we have put up on the web in terms of pages, and we cannot access them because we as humans have too little bandwidth. We don't have the time to look through every page on the web, of course. And so I think that it's still a good thing to have someone who roams around and reads down all this static information and assembles it and make it accessible. And I think that's a good business, and it's probably will be, but it's not driven by more knowledge-oriented things, by experience and so on, because that one is hyper difficult for an individual company to control and to have access to by themselves. And I think that it's important as well, because having that kind of power in single entities would not be good for humanity, I think. So we need to distribute it and see it as a distributed thing, like the web itself,
right,
because it's distributed today. And we shouldn't see too much power concentration. And I think that one of the problems with AI is that you need to be a PhD in mathematics, or you need to have a deep computer science understanding, or you need to have brain science or cognitive science skills that you have got from universities and so on to be truly successful in that space. And I think that that's the most important part to attack at this point, so that we don't get the concentration of that the one who has the resources, they start building this kind of systems utilizing more advanced technologies that can mirror and do more advanced things that we normally call more human-like, and that it returns so much power to these entities. So we need to distribute it, actually. And then we are back to the democratization problem here, that we need truly to see that it should be distributed. And so I think, because if you talk about systems that can actually, even though they don't understand, but they can assemble information in new ways, they can rapidly control much more power on the web. And I think that's a big problem if we don't address it early enough. So I think that I hope that there will be other companies like ExpertMaker providing other types of tools in this space, because this is not about single technology. It's about we need to bring out more advanced technologies in a more broader sense down the road here. So
yes, I'm crazy. That was a very diplomatic way to say, yeah, Rob. Yeah, there's a bigger challenge here that we're talking about here. It's not just about Google. It is about, I mean, this kind of layer that we're talking about on top of all data, is something that's far greater than what's happening today. But yeah, I see your point. That's good.
It was maybe a diplomatic way of saying it, but I still believe that problem itself needs to be taking the next step with the web, as we know today. We truly need to address it, because that shouldn't fall into hands of a few companies, because that would be very troublesome for humanity, I think.
Well, it's something that I would agree with you. Like the openness and the free nature of the web, for the most part, seems to have extended into this world of the open API, right, where everybody's pulling everybody's data. But it's got to go beyond that, because it's feeding. Whenever somebody uses of somebody else's API, it feeds that API. It gives it more power while it's extending its tentacles, right? So, and And I think that that's the challenge that's in front of us. We need more people, more companies thinking like you in order to be able to generate this distributed and open environment for this kind of data. All right, so maybe Google, maybe Google won't go anywhere.
No, probably not.
Probably not. No, because they've got cars that drive themselves and Android. So, what about businesses? I'm trying to gracefully shift this away so that people, people realize that maybe there's some kind of value here in in artificial intelligence. And I'm trying to move away from my broad statement about Google here without being too embarrassed anymore. But the concept that this is going to change, that artificial intelligence is going to change many industries or all industries, is this something that you subscribe to? That, listen, the way that we buy, what we buy, when we buy it, the way that we travel, the way that we create relationships, the way that we answer the phone, when we answer the phone, how our email comes into us, does this all get impacted eventually by artificial intelligence? And then how do companies start to participate in this so that they can be in the middle of this when this kind of descends on us? So first of all, does it change everything? Artificial intelligence, does it change all these industries the way that we're doing it today?
I think it will change most things that we do with computers. I'm a strong believer of that, because if we are, when we as humans, we use different kinds of devices, and we need better forms of interactions with these devices. And we know that information overload is becoming a serious problem, even in our daily lives or at work or whatever we do with computers. We have enormous problems in accessing all this and how to actually utilize all this information that's available today. So I think that, and just helping me finding things when I want to buy stuff and so on, just discovery becomes more and more complex. And one thing is that we tried already to use, for example, statistics. So if you like product A, then you probably like product B, for example. and those kind of very simplistic relationships, they are not human at all. Because if you would have a friend that you asked for advice on what you were about to buy, for example, and your friend started running statistics on you, you would only get normal distributed answers. So you would get exactly what you expected.
Right.
And that would be so boring that you wouldn't have that friend anymore, probably. And so that's just looking at the kind of simplistic approaches we have taken today to this problem, because normally recommendations are very complex. For example, if I ask you what kind of gift I should buy for blah, 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 and I just formulate which kind of person, how old that person is, and so on, that's a really complex thing. And it requires lots of brain power, and I don't expect a statistically correct answer from you, because I'd like to be enlightened by what you have to tell me. I'd like to, wow, how could you come up with that idea? I'd like that. And so the problem is that this is a one-way alley we are walking today by introducing simple statistics into these complex systems and comparing, and it will be more and more annoying actually by having all these simplistic relationships thrown at us and producing recommendations, for example. And we can see that people click I like buttons everywhere and so on, and I suspect that they are just generating huge normal curves, and if you are just getting what you're expecting, then things become boring, and then you go elsewhere to find the qualities that we normally associate with human activities. So we are back to, in order to provide a exciting and profound service for people, we need to address what is it to be human, and how can we improve those mechanisms so that they are more like us, not like simple statistics, because that will never work. And we see this problem becomes more and more inherent because we get more and more data, and the more data you get, the more boring systems you actually end up with, right?
Rightly so. But I mean, is there a point in time where you have enough data that you just got inputs and that the data actually does allow to us to create an artificial intelligence around a decision point that will be unique? We've heard these Facebook stories around the amount of data that Facebook collects on a daily basis is astounding, and but I think that when I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't know how to access this data. They don't know what they should be looking at. It's just basically reams and reams and reams of data, and they say, well, yeah, I'd love to be able to access it. I'd love to be able to find trends in it. I'd love to be able to create something that enhances the experience for my customers, but there's just so much data, Rob. I can't even look at it right now. So I just kind of do a simple recommendation engine and I move on, right? You like if A, then B is what they come up with. So, but I mean, is there a possibility that you just at some point have so much data that it can mimic artificial intelligence through data and come up with a good? Am I off here again?
I think that if I don't believe that actually, because I'm a firm believer of that life is really complex, and
it is.
It is so tremendously complex, and knowledge is equally complex because that's us. And in order to create knowledge and so on, you need to walk around and be part of an environment and so on. And so I don't see any way that clicking simple I like buttons will result in artificial intelligence, because that one would be very boring, I would suspect, at least from my perspective, because I think that more people need to participate, because when we look at just what kind of data do people collect when they get the opportunity to create AI on their desktop, it's so varied.
Yeah.
You could never imagine. People have different way of looking even at simple tasks. So I suspect that there could be millions of micro search engines just for any simple task, like recognizing a pencil or whatever it is. I mean, simple things could have so many angles and perspective represented with human knowledge. Different angles combined in different ways, bound to different contexts in time and so on. So this is actually, it is really much more interesting than you can collect using big data, because big data, it's always been big data in complex domains. Big data is nothing new, and even though it's bigger than it used to be,
there's more of it.
There's more of it, but it doesn't provide any more value, because I could maybe say that if I gave 10 people the task to design that system, to collect that kind of data, they would design it in 10 different ways. So which one is the right one? Which one is the one that's implemented now in most systems? There are so many ways, because we are humans actually. And I think that we need to have that manifold and address it, because that's what we like. That's why life is interesting and exciting. The other stuff is boring.
I'd love it. You just get me thinking, I've twin boys, and they're just about to turn 6, and they have a different worldly perspective than I do around things, right? And it's the adage that I'm reliving my youth through those guys, right? I'm relearning things that from their perspective, right? So, just in our conversations between myself and my sons, it's the same thing, right? Is that I'm relearning these things, and I'm looking at it from their context, which is drastically different, and often right compared to me. But that's so I gotta say, like, when you think about this, and now we've been talking about this for quite some time, but So how are businesses supposed to onboard this? How are businesses supposed to start? Like, you know, it was revolutionary that Amazon has this recommendation engine. It was revolutionary that Netflix
Absolutely.
they created a recommendation engine, and you know the dollars they spent on this, both of them, were this algorithm from data that other people have put in. But so if that's not it, where do companies begin with artificial intelligence, and how can they bring this into their companies?
I think that it's the normal way, and the normal entry point is through data, of course.
Yeah.
And we talked about having the capability to do data mining, for example, and that should be built into a modeling process that actually lead up to a very rapid prototype. Maybe a transformation of the data you have in a database, so you find a new representation that can add, for example, a discovery feature,
right.
And then you can measure that and mine that as well. Because if you add certain things and you have good, strong, so you keep the interaction, the behavioral data around that, you can also understand more about the problem, and you might be able to transform it in a new way. So it's actually a very iterative process, and knowledge is an iterative process itself. It's a dynamical and iterative process. So it's very good to start with very simple problems like the data you already have and play around with it, see how it can be extended in many different directions, and then put into play. So you actually produce something using it, and do that in a very, very short period of time. I think that's the best way to do AI, regardless if you're using a tool like ExpertMaker or APIs like the one we provide, or if you just read a simple book on AI and start plugging in some kind of machine learning algorithms into your problems. I think regardless of how you do it, it's actually a very, very important journey for any business, I'd say, as a measure to create value.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Lars. That this is.
Thank you.
Yes, we agree on that. This is the beginning of this time, and I would say that what you're describing, if you're not doing this right now, if you're not at least thinking about this kind of thing, which is, somehow putting a layer of objectivity onto your data, and then trying to find patterns through that data, simple patterns. Then you're not embracing this fully as a business, and I think that there's risk there if you don't do that properly, because your competitors are probably doing this or thinking about it. So start to think about it. So I'm loath to end this conversation, but I think that my mind has been blown, and for those people who are watching or listening to this, I believe that when you start to think the impact of this, and think about what you're talking about, which is reimagining the way that we look at data. We reimagine the way that we look at the web when it comes to removing the boundaries of our previous, it's not evolution. I mean, the web is a revolution. Mobile is a revolution, and it should be this.
Yeah.
So why do we look at this? Why are we recreating paper, digital? So, you've got me thinking, and hopefully you guys out there listening or watching are thinking as well, and thinking about how you can implement things like this in your business. So where should we send people for more information? You guys you've done a hackathon. You got some great writings on your website. What's the one place we should drive people to?
They should for sure take a quick look in Wikipedia and start looking at these new terminology and
Absolutely.
These new words and so on, because there are a few of them, and there are many good books and so on available, and of course they are very welcome to visit our website, and we have a developer program available, so we provide the tools for free, so it's very low threshold to start playing around with it, and we provide server-side services and APIs and so on as well, part of this. So that should be a low entry threshold to start with.
And that's at expertmaker.com. I love it. I just pulled it up where it says get started, and you'll see it when you can't see it now, Lars, but it's behind you, and what it says is it's your get started page. So just get started. Do something in this space, please, please, right? That's the lesson here.
That's true. I totally agree with that.
Oh man. Well, see there. Now we've come to a mutual understanding here at the end of the episode, and I can't thank you enough for doing this. It's very late in Sweden. You stayed out to at your office to be able to accommodate the time shift. But I'm forever indebted, because it's an eye-opening conversation, and I can't wait to write this up, simply because lessons are learned incredibly, many lessons I've learned here. So for those of you who are out there, please, if you found value in this, and I know you did, reach out to Lars and thank him. Right? It's just that simple. Reach out to Lars and say, listen, I learned something in that episode from Untether. Just thank him for this, and go and check out expertmaker.com. And if you're interested in this, join their developer program. Take a look at what's going on behind the scenes. Just get started in this space. Learn about this space, because other companies are doing it and you should be doing it too. And it is going to have an impact on mobile commerce, on e-commerce, on the way you travel, the way you shop. It's going to have things like discovery. We never got into that. App discovery. We're going to customer care. The way you email, the way you use your phone, the way you communicate. It's all going to be impacted by these things because it's contextualized, and we are about to enter this era. So please go and learn about this. I implore you. So, Lars, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate your time. We've been speaking with Lars Hard, who is the CTO and founder of ExpertMaker. Go to expertmaker.com. For those of you who are still here, mind blown, I'm absolutely sure of it, because mine is. Thank you for bringing this into your day, wherever you are, whether you are napping right now, you're just waking from a nap, you missed a great episode. If you're driving, you're at the gym, which I hope you are, or you're in your backyard gardening, thank you for bringing this into your day. I really appreciate it. If you have any comments, suggestions, thoughts, guests, ideas, reach out. Untether@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. And again, just reach out to Lars and thank him for being on this episode, as I'm about to do. Lars, thank you. Go get some sleep.
Thanks.
See you later, everybody.